The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. We are brought to you by OMVIC, Crown, Sound Insurance, and Hotspot Auto Parts. I'm joined today by John Raymond. He's a consultant with the APA, and our mechanic, as always, Chris Muir. Welcome back, gentlemen. We don't often talk about the APA, the Automobile Protection Association, which we should talk more often because they're a great consumer advocacy group. I do a lot of work with them. I know Chris is on board with them as well. Let's give this first few minutes to the APA.
Great.
And John, tell us a little bit more about what they do for consumers.
The Automobile Protection Association, APA, has been around for over 40 years. We were founded in Quebec. We are across Canada. And our mandate as a nonprofit is to help motorists across Canada with specific issues that they may have with their cars, and sometimes act as an advice center, sometimes a clearinghouse. You should go here, or you should do this with your vehicle. And we also produce media. So we have a program with W5 every year, and the Lemonade Car Guide, for example, this TV program that we have. And those would be two. And the third one is actually legal affairs, where we look at cases and we'll go after class action suits.
You also bring things before the Senate, the Canadian Senate, to change law.
We do that too. So we were in the Senate and the House of Commons over the last 2 years, looking at the changes in legislations.
So viewers are probably familiar with the Lemonade Car Guide because it's been around forever, and it's kind of like a snitch book. It's awesome. You can find any vehicle going back 9 years or 11 years. I get a little bit mixed up. But you can read all the bulletins, everything, secret warranties, all kinds of stuff.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh yeah, good, bad, and the ugly, and the ugliest. I mean, some of
Plus
that's
tips
crazy.
on buying a car, whether new or used, advice, leasing, financing, things like that. But on a daily basis, we field calls, we field emails, and as a member-driven organization, we have members that call us and they say, what car should I buy? I'm old and I'm planning on selling my car. How should I go about that? They may have some insurance questions, or they may have a car that they recently bought that they've had all sorts of problems with, and they're looking at some sort of restitution with either a dealer or a manufacturer. So
I find the word protection in your name is probably the most important part of that name, because it really is about protecting consumers on every end of the equation. I know you can also help people find mechanics, like Chris. You can reference them when they need help in their
body
communities.
shops, mechanics, outlets to sell your car, like I previously said. And plus we have a referral service. So if you become a member of the APA, it's a yearly membership, we will provide up to 5 quotes on different makes and models. We have virtually every model with the exception of a few. And we will tell you what the dealer cost is, what the appropriate markup is in your location, whether it's Ontario, Quebec, Maritimes, or even in BC. And in our main 2 focal locations, which are Montreal and Toronto, we also have a list of APA-approved retailers that will honor the prices at the suggested markups that we deal with. So you'll be dealing with an APA-approved dealer that will ensure that you get the car at the price that you want with no additional charges, and that it will be a fair deal, not only for you as a consumer, but the dealer will make a reasonable income that they could support your
So
purchase.
everybody's happy. And this show is sponsored by OMVIC, which is Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council. I can say that 4 times fast now after 7 years. And you work in tandem with them as well. So we don't have a lemon law in Canada per se, but we do have levels of consumer protection, which vary from province to province.
Correct.
But there are federal ones as well. And you help institute those, or at least make people aware of where they can get help if it's beyond the
So
APA.
unlike the US, that each state has their lemon laws, in Canada we don't. We do have an arbitration process called CAMVAT, which we've talked about before. But essentially, if a consumer contacts us and they're having a difficult problem with their car, we may elect to go with them through the CAMVAT process, or we will give them the tools and the education that they need to ensure that their car is either repaired or bought back.
We're throwing a lot of letters at people. You can go on the APA website and see what CAMVAP and OMVIC and APA are, so don't get worried about
Or call us at
or call us. Yeah, call.
416-204.
And ask for John. Call and ask for John, and you can actually talk to him. He loves when I do that. That's great.
And then the calls just come in.
And on future shows, we'll give away a membership. We do that frequently, which is kind of fun as well. So that will be part of it.
And literally, it's it's not only buying a car. It's if you have mechanical issues, if you really don't know how to deal with a garage, if you want to find a good garage, we're really an educational source.
It's
for
consumer
consumers.
protection from top to bottom.
Correct.
I really like working with you guys, and I get a lot of information for my work from you because that nonprofit part is a big deal. It really, really helps when you're trying to direct people to take the best care of their own best interest. We'll be back with more Lemonade. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. We're doing something a little bit different. John and Chris are on location at Hotspot Auto Parts. They're going to go through some aftermarket information for you viewers.
Thanks, Lorraine. Hi, Chris. Well, where are we today? We are at Hotspot Auto Parts, and we are going to be doing a segment on the aftermarket and how it affects all of us and where we could go when we want to do some of our do-it-yourself repairs and also learn what some of these components on the table are about.
Certainly.
So the aftermarket is a large segment of the industry that serves garages, dealerships, also municipalities with their trucks. And it functions as the alternate source for parts. So when you're out of warranty or your car or your truck has had a number of miles on it and you want to look for a less expensive alternative, you would look to the aftermarket. And the aftermarket parts are usually priced lower. And sometimes they are actually of a higher quality than the original OEM parts. And why is that? That's because 7 or 8 years down the road, when the OEM parts or the parts that came with your car originally developed problems, the aftermarket segment was able to correct those issues with the replacement parts. So you have to look at the aftermarket as replacement parts for your vehicles. They have virtually everything. With the exception of maybe some trim and interior parts. And usually it's actually the same companies that manufacture parts for your Ford originally or your Honda or your Hyundai. And these are ones that your garage, your local garage would use. So today we're going to focus on specific parts and how they rate them. In the industry, they rate them as good, better, or best. So what does that mean to you? So if we take a simple wiper blade like this, you could have a wiper blade, for argument's sake, and we're going to call it a cheapie, good, at $10 to $15, and then you could have a better, which is a little bit more, and then the best, which would be a higher quality. And I'll let Chris explain to you where that quality difference lies.
Certainly. Like anything else, auto parts are one of those things where most of the time you get what you pay for. The bottom line, or the good product, is good enough. It's adequate, but it's not made of the highest quality materials. The tolerances aren't quite as high as maybe they should be. Most of the better stuff is getting really close, if not matching OEM specification. It is very good stuff. And then best is the highest quality materials, the best value for money, what we find in the aftermarket. So there is a big difference in the actual quality of the part, and it's best to talk to either your parts representative or your mechanic to find out what choice is best for you. If you're going to keep the car for a couple weeks, maybe you don't want to spend the money on the best. But if you're going to keep the car for many, many years, like most of us do, putting out the money ahead of time for a quality aftermarket component is definitely worth it.
Oh, absolutely. And there's the auto parts centers, so whether you go to whether you go to Hotspot or other, they could tell you what parts you could change yourself, such as a cabin air filter, for
Yep.
example, an air filter over here, or wiper blades. So and actually often they'll even help you install wiper blades and other things like that. So there is work that you could do on your car out of warranty that a local auto parts store, also known as a jobber, could provide you.
Yeah, there's lots of help and lots of experience behind those counters. Most of the time you go to a good aftermarket parts shop, and they are either parts people that have been in the industry for years and years and years. They know what works, they know what doesn't. Or a lot of the time you'll find that they're retired mechanics, ex-mechanics that wanted something to do, so now they haul parts all day. So there's lots of knowledge at most of these parts suppliers, certainly. But
What we will do is we will give you an idea of what you should ask for, depending
Certainly.
on the type of product that you have.
certainly. So let's start something that everybody has dreaded every time they go into the mechanic since the beginning of time. The mechanic comes up to you, they tell you that you need a set of brakes. And you don't want something cheap, but you don't want something too expensive. What are your options as far as braking materials go? Well, John has brought in for us today, off the shelves here, a couple different pad selections. We've got probably a better selection here in a semi-metallic pad. And what you'll see is a little bit of a reflective material in there. They're a good all-round pad, usually what the car comes with, or most passenger cars come with. And then we've got what you might consider a best, and this is a full ceramic pad, a little bit harder, lasts a little bit longer, has the potential to squeal a little bit more than the semi-metallics. But again, both good parts, both good options. The semi-metallic is generally a little bit cheaper than the full ceramic pad. But again, your parts person or your mechanic can help you pick the best one for your vehicle. Usually what we see is we'll see a ceramic in something that it has more heat applied to it, be it a fleet vehicle or a higher performance vehicle, where the semi-metallic does fine on the Corolla when you use it to go grab milk at the corner store. Moving away from there, we can see different, well, we have one rotor here. Got a nice coated rotor. You'll see it's got a coating on it in order to help inhibit corrosion on the rotor. You can get them coated, uncoated, slotted, cross-drilled, and again, they all have different applications for them. What you're looking for depends on your driving style, the type of vehicle it is, the weight of the vehicle, and again, your professional parts people or mechanic can help you pick what's best for you.
Chris, let's hold that thought, and let's go back to studio with Lorraine.
Thanks, John and Chris. We're going to a short break. We'll be back with more Lemonade Car Show. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to Lemonade Car Show. More from Hotspot Auto Parts with Chris and John.
Thanks, Lorraine. And Chris, we're back at Hotspot Auto Parts. We were talking about friction. Do you have any further comments to talk about?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know how the friction material actually works on a vehicle. So what we've got is we've got the rotor, which is actually splined or bolted to the hub or the rotating part of the vehicle. This here is a hub right here. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But how do you get rid of energy? You have to change an energy state. So we've got kinetic energy by the car rolling, and we have to turn that into heat energy. And the way that we do that is we have a caliper that would sit over top of the rotor and hold on to these pads.
I'll pretend I'm the caliper.
There's a caliper, and as we roll along, when we apply the caliper, we actually start applying a force to the brake pads, which drags the pad on the face of the rotor and turns that kinetic energy into heat energy. And of course, the more heat energy we can dissipate, the better we can stop the car. And that's why we say getting a cross-drilled or a vented brake is going to help dissipate a lot of that heat energy, making the car slow down even faster. So that's kind of how that works. And depending on how much heat energy you need to get rid of, how fast and how heavy the car is, that depends on what type of braking system, or really dictates what type of braking system you'll need.
And as Chris was talking to earlier, there are different grades
There certainly
of
is.
brakes. Once again, good, better, best. If I take an example of a Dodge Caravan, okay, which go through brakes at a rapid rate, as we've as we know, and we've had many calls,
Yep.
it's imperative that you get the best quality rotor
Yep.
and pad. If you
Right.
don't and you get good, you may get as low as 15,000 kilometers, and we've seen that
We've seen it
many
lots.
times.
The old General Motors Grand Ams and Malibus were notorious for 24,000 kilometer brake jobs. And as soon as we moved into a higher quality pad, we started seeing that mileage go up and increase. So it definitely goes back to put the best that you can afford on
And
the
that would be
vehicle.
the quality of materials. Also on rotors, once again, good, better, best, you'll find that a good rotor actually weighs significantly less than a heavy rotor.
That's right. That's completely correct. Less rotational mass, better fuel mileage.
So why don't we move ahead to, I think that's a bearing assembly?
That is a wheel bearing. It's actually a wheel bearing and hub assembly. So this one's kind of a neat one. I recognize it from my years in the trade. This one is an integrated wheel speed sensor inside of a hub bearing assembly. This is the hub. This is where the wheel or the rotor would mount onto. These are the wheel studs that hold the wheel on itself, and it has a bearing inside of here that allows these to rotate. This would be solid mounted in a knuckle, and we can see that the wheel could spin freely in it. On the back side here, we have the wheel speed sensor. So there's a whole bunch of little teeth in here that this electronic sensor picks up or measures their speed of rotation. This is a very crucial piece to your vehicle. These are the ones where you hear that grinding noise or that whirring noise that changes when you slide left to right, and this is the part that usually needs to be replaced.
And those usually go on front wheel drive cars 5, 6, 7 years out.
Yeah, that's pretty good timeline for front wheel drive cars is 5, 6, 7 years out. Old hub bearings used to mount on a spindle and we could service them independently, and they were very inexpensive. The labor was a little bit more. These hub bearing assemblies now tend to be quite expensive, and it's something where you buy the best that you can afford. The cheap ones, I've had to replace them at the 6-month interval, and it was through no fault of anybody but the quality of material used in the bearing. We use a high quality one at the shop that I usually work at, and we have very, very few return problems with them. But there's a lot of technology in here. A little bit of corrosion back here can cause the ABS to activate prematurely. There can be noise issues from them. And again, this is what holds your hub on the car.
And they're expensive.
They're very expensive.
Let's
yes.
move on to suspension.
Okay, so you want to see how we hold this whole
So
progress up?
next to Chris, he has what we call in the industry a quick strut.
It is.
And in the old days, a consumer would just change the strut if you hold it up.
So there's a whole bunch of parts actually in this one piece. This base here and going up through the center, you can see just a little bit of shine probably right there. This is a strut from here up, not including this coil, not including this boot or this bumper or this top. Just this piece here is what we used to replace. Dealerships, if they replace a strut, they don't replace all the goodies that come around it, they just replace this bottom piece. And while they're expensive in this configuration, they actually end up saving my consumer a lot of money on assembly.
And why?
Well, in order to get this strut out, I have to compress this spring. It's a bit of a danger thing. This is where things blow up, people lose fingers and stuff like that. So if I don't have to compress this spring, I feel better about it. But better than that, going into the car, the consumer's got a new spring, they've got a new dust boot, they've got a new bump stop. These wear out all the time. They are meant to limit suspension travel.
Not to mention.
The strut topper.
Yeah.
As you can see, I can turn it nice and easy. I can turn it nice and easy because this is what your car uses to allow that whole knuckle assembly to spin on the top. This is a McPherson style strut. This is mounted to the strut tower, and when you turn your car back and forth, this whole strut moves to allow the wheel to move on the outside
So when you
of it.
get knocking noises in the car, they usually come from the top here.
They
And
can.
if you change just the insert or the strut, but
Yep.
you don't change this, you will continue to have knocking
Or
noises.
worse yet, you had a leaky strut, you replaced your strut, a month down the road, your strut mount starts knocking, you're paying that labor again. These are relatively inexpensive to the labor that it takes just to take it apart, and it's all new up front.
Chris, we're running out of time. We're gonna, during the season, we're gonna be coming back with more parts, more aftermarket news, and more tech advice for the
forward to
consumer
it.
out there so they can change wiper blades, filters, and now we will turn it back to Lorraine.
We'll be back after this break with Ask a Mechanic on Lemonade Car Show. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm with John Raymond and Chris Muir, and this is the favorite part of the show for a lot of viewers. It's Ask the Mechanic. Well, let's take our first call.
Gord, London, Ontario, called before, was wondering about a 2013 Mitsubishi Lancer, $5,000 or 5,000 kilometers oil change if it's necessary. The dealer's telling me yes.
John, you want to take this one?
Oh, absolutely. Gord, thank you for calling again. It's a very simple question and an answer for that matter. Go into your owner's manual and see what the recommendation is. It's probably somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 kilometers on that vehicle, and I would go with what the manufacturer suggests. Other than the dealer, 5,000 kilometers seems quite low. Mitsubishi Lancer happens to be a good product, quite reliable, but you should always follow the recommendations of the manufacturer and the owner's manual.
And remember, we are extreme climate, so when you're wondering which little part of the box to look in, that's the one. Hope that helps, Gord. Let's take our next call.
My name is Michael Buchanan. I got a great question. I've got a Toyota Corolla. My speedometer stopped functioning at 209,999. It won't give me any more, and I've got close to 400,000 on it. And I've been estimating the mileage each time I went in for a sticker. Is it Toyota's responsibility, because I'm listening to your program, to give me a new speedometer because it won't go past 299,999, 200,000. Okay? That's my question.
Great question, and yay for 400,000 kilometers on the car. Chris, take it away.
It's pretty well-known concern with Toyota Corollas, as well as the Matrix and the Vibe as well, that they hit that 299,999 and the odometer no longer ticks. What are they willing to do for you? Not a whole bunch. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where if you want your odometer to work, that's a repair that you have to pay for. And as far as I know, they're replacing the cluster, so you start over at zero again with a sticker that says this car actually has on it.
The APA has been effective in this area. Toyota did have extended warranty on this component. It's probably expired. This is an older vehicle, but the gentleman or other people in a similar situation should contact the APA, and we will give them the appropriate information for them to contact their Toyota dealer and tell them what to say in this case. Because
Okay.
I think they are still covering some of those clusters, actually.
Okay, great. Last caller, call the APA. Let's take another question.
Good afternoon. I'm looking into purchasing a 2018 new Hyundai, and I needed your opinion for a small standard car.
Well, we all know that I own one of these. So
And I own one of these.
I do not own one of these.
I know. Honestly, I've got an Elantra at standard, and I think it's a 17. I love it. It's fun. It's sporty. It's bang for the buck.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm all the way in on that.
Hyundai's come a long way.
Yeah.
We see that with our members' vehicles at the APA. I happen to drive a Hyundai. Also, full disclosure.
Yeah.
If you look at product quality, it's great. The warranty is improved. The cars are nothing like they were before, and it's a perfectly good choice for a compact car that she's interested in.
Do I think
There's a new Accent. I think you and I both drove the
Yeah.
same car recently.
Yeah. The only thing you're going to find, caller, is you'll be limited in your color selection because when you go for a manual transmission, there's not a lot of them, and they might have to bring it in from somewhere else. And if you go to sell it, you got to find someone who can still drive a standard. But you know what? I buy them anyway because I just like driving them.
Yeah.
And you know what? You get over the color thing. You may want dark blue, you take gray, who cares? Like, it's not
And
that
some
big a
of the
deal.
models may not have air conditioning. So if you get the Model L, let's say in the Accent,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure on the new one, but the old one you didn't have AC, so.
Really? They have heated seats, and they were the first ones with Bluetooth that was standard and stuff like that. I'm surprised it doesn't have air in it. I did not know that.
But it's a good, solid choice.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a great. That's such a crowded segment too. Like, you have lots and lots of choice, so drive a bunch of them. You know, you don't have to buy a Hyundai, but I go back to how much stuff costs and what it's worth, and I'm a fan.
And your personal experience.
That's all the time we have for the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Omvik and Crown. Thanks to John Raymond and Chris Muir, and thanks to you viewers.